Hello, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. Today, for this episode, we have Justin Hoffman, who's been a pioneer for the farming industry, mainly in the data and AI space, and also in the cybersecurity space. Welcome, Justin. Thanks for coming to my podcast today.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And if you can just introduce yourself to our audience, I would really appreciate that.
Sure. Hey, I'm Justin Hoffman. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of AgTechLogic. We are a farming and data solution company. We create hardware, IoT hardware for the farming industry that helps farmers actually save money through spending less money in herbicide and spray. And how we do that, we actually deploy both hardware and data solutions in the cloud and using generative AI in the farming industry. And we help the enterprise agricultural providers, the ones that make your food, create vegetables, strawberries, vineyards, a lot of the large enterprise farms that make things that show up in grocery stores. We actually help them control the invasive weeds, as well as help nourish the vegetables they grow. And we do that by intelligent precision spraying and spraying less chemicals into the ground.
Before we can, I think start off, right? I want to make sure, you've been in the industry for almost like over 15 years, mainly on the data space. And what are some of the changes that you've seen, last 15 years, right? Because uh, what I have seen in my space, over the last 20 years, is, I think how rapid and drastically the technology has been changing, especially last 3 years, 4 years. I think it's been a change on a daily basis, I would say, right? Like, mainly with chat GPTs of the world, AIs, agents, and a lot of other stuff, right? Every industry has been impacted drastically. So, based on what you've seen, how things have been progressing, and in terms of the future state too, right? Wanted to, see your perspective on the challenges that you're seeing right now, and what is that as an industry, we have to be prepared for.
Sure, great question. So I'm going to start with like probably the first one, where just the evolving and evolution of AI. When I first started out, I got a degree in mechanical engineering and immediately did nothing in mechanical engineering and went straight into data and analytics and spent like the majority of my career in data and data science. And when marketing kind of was really pitching data science for solving lots of solutions, there was not a whole lot of knowledge on how to even do data science. I don't even have a degree in data science. There were no degrees in data science when I started out in roughly 2011. And as I progressed, I got onto data science, modeling traditional data science at this point, where you're modeling on continuous variables, you have target variables, there's a process that you follow in data to clean it and aggregate and model. And then now with some of the generative AI things, you don't have to do really any of that. You write a text prompt. The thing that you worry about is, do I have all the things that I need to tell the Gen AI what to do and how to do it and what not to do, provide it context and things. So it's just like, it's changed so drastically, where you would bring in a model and you'd spend your day not only cleaning up the data, but then fine tuning the model and testing all the different parameters. Now you basically take it an image and throw it into some sort of transformer pre-existing model, and it just dumps out answers for you. It's a pretty significant evolutional change in data science. And so it's almost kind of like, well, your original methodology for data science just fundamentally changed in some ways. I'm sure there's still an application for, we're going to call it traditional data science versus generative AI, but it's a significant evolution. But I still think at the end of the day, even in businesses, one of the adoptions of data science was, what is the problem that we are solving with AI? Whether or not it's traditional AI, generative AI, there's still a problem there that we have to solve, and we're using generative AI or traditional AI to solve, focusing on the problem is still the thing. Like that, you still have to focus on the problem and what does AI bring to the table. I think in the farming industry, like farmers aren't really interested in how accurate your model is. Like they care about does it does it solve an issue that I have right now? Does it impact how much profitability I have, or increase my savings, or reduce my labor costs if you're talking about some kind of robotics type solution? Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of concept where there's not a whole lot of AI deployed, I'd say, in agriculture, like at a production scale. There's a lot of proof of concepts. There's a lot of cool, neat things in agriculture, but I wouldn't say it's like widely adopted yet. And I think that's really one of the biggest challenges we've seen.
You know, specific to farming industry, right, and mainly for AgTech, you know, how are you adapting to these changes? And you know, especially for companies like AgTech, you know, since you are more into innovations.
Yeah.
Uh, so how do you do the course correction, right? Because you know when things are changing so rapidly, what is your measurable, you know, I think a baseline, you know, because you know, I think end of the day, you know, when you're into innovations, especially into farming sector, how do you see those things? You know, so I just wanted to see your view on that. So.
Yeah, yeah. So AgTechLogic, we specialize in helping farmers save on herbicide costs and actually put down less herbicide into the ground that manages, you know, pesticides, insecticides, and herbicide. Those are different chemicals that almost every farmer and a lot of different farmers use to manage their crops, right? So they spend a lot of money. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on chemical alone just to manage these industrial scale farms that feed the United States, right, and the globe. Now, when you get there and you say, okay, well, this data set doesn't exist for, you know, let's say they want to prevent powdery mildew on a grape, which is a thing that can kill off one of the plants, right? Well, so that data set doesn't really exist. And so then you come into this data science problem of, okay, usually traditional data science would be like, collect the data, collect the samples, get the example of the powdery mildew, and then train the model, label the images, do all those, like that's the process, right? Well, through generative AI, and what we found with AgTechLogic is, well, I can leverage generative AI to get to a quick answer, and it's actually a fairly accurate answer without doing all, like very little collecting and data labeling, which is like massive amounts of time and labor, right, as a small company. And so where we have found innovation to pivot quickly is actually using the prompt to change it up, right? I have one specific example of a massive farm in California. I mean, they farm tens of thousands of acres of orchards and pistachios and almonds. And they have a problem with gopher holes. Like they have gophers that can, like, you know, get into the root system. They have burrows and so on. That didn't exist in our AI detection, right? We have a model that detects irrigation leaks. So if you're you know, driving through your farm and you see this big puddle of water where there's not supposed to be a puddle of water, happens to be that generative AI is actually really good at detecting water. It says, hey, look, this is standing water right here. Here it is. And we saw a lot of success with that, right? So when we were on ground, they, you know, got these like big holes in the ground. And I'm like, what are those things? I'm not a farmer, right? Like, what are those things? Oh, those are gopher holes, right? Well, then, you know, a week later, we had a model that we had, we had updated our model to detect what we thought is like, okay, try a gopher hole, see how good it is. And 100% it picked them out, no problem. And from a week-over-week basis, if you went to the traditional data science route, that would have been probably months of work to collect. I have to go on site, spend time and money, take images and collect images of what does a gopher hole look like. More likely than not, there's not a whole open source data set out there of gopher hole images, right? And so then, yeah, that the speed to market is incredible with generative AI. From my perspective, as the CTO, to deploy just from one feature to the next, one challenge to the next for a farmer. Now I can take that detection and send it to the guys that manage the pests, on the enterprise scale. And with AgTechLogic and AgTelio, our platform, in our system, we actually have GPS coordinates for those images and detection. So now we can display that on a map and say, hey, look, here it is. Here's the GPS coordinate. Here's the irrigation leak. Here's a gopher hole and the new pest that just popped up. And then we can send that as an alert to a lot of the different organizational members and say, prioritize your work here. Don't go scan 10,000 acres as a scouting activity. Go right here. We found it because we were already collecting images and we used AI to detect it for you. So I don't know, that's it. Just a rapid to market is just incredible with generative AI.
No, I think you've shared some great points, Justin. I mean, one thing that I've seen personally, talking to different industry leaders for data and AI, is to convince your consumer, right? To how do they see the value, right? End of the day, I guess if they don't see the value of what we are building and what you're investing into data and AI, and how is it impacting their industry and their ROI, then I think it's going to be effort going into waste, right? So so how do you overcome those challenges today? What's your since you're into innovation, farming and data and AI. There's so much of investment getting into these sectors today, right? Because most of them are like critical to success projects for you guys, and it's a heavy investment.
Right.
So how do you look at that aspect of it, right? Because end of the day, it has to be justified.
Yeah, right. And I think the focus would be the value of the insight, right? So folks at AgTechLogic would probably hear me say this. We don't just R&D to R&D. We R&D to provide a solution that does something. You can take action. It's an actionable insight from the AI, right? The prediction is one thing, but then what do you do with that prediction and how you change the business, send it to the guy that's considered the pest expert and how to eradicate pests. Like that's the action that is of the value for that organization. So at the fundamental level in data or data science, when you create either a dashboard or a prediction from a model, it has to be actionable. Like otherwise, then the consumer just doesn't, they won't care about it. It's going to be cool. It's kind of actually how I viewed generative AI at first, kind of early beginnings. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. You can put in a prompt, it'll spit something out. Write a thing for you. And then images started getting generated, okay, that's cool. Those are fun for memes. But now you can build a whole website and software development, and now you can dump code straight from generative AI, and it actually is directly applicable to your business. So from the consumer's perspective, it has to be actionable. I have to be able to use the insight to do something that benefits me. And I think that's where AgTechLogic kind of sets ourselves apart, where it's not just about the detection of some sort of thing on the farm using the image, or some sort of detection about flow rates going off the rails, and maybe you have nozzles that are clogged that don't work anymore, and that's a maintenance issue. Actually sending out the crew to fix that, or notifying the spray manager that, hey, look, you have one of these sprayers that is no longer functioning properly. You just sprayed 10,000 acres today, or let's say 1,000 acres more realistically. Your right boom on the sprayer actually was broken, and you wouldn't have known that had you not been collecting data and using anomaly detection to highlight that, right? So I think for the consumer, it's always about the action. What can I do with the data that's going to change something for me? Hopefully, in our cases, like saving on herbicide or saving on cost savings, and more efficient use of labor. So I think our ultimate consumer cares about those things, right? Like, hey, that's great. You have cool AI. All right, awesome. I don't even know what to do with AI. That's what we've been told in a couple times by some farmers. Like, hey, that's great. You collect images, but I don't care because I don't know what to do with that yet. That's an actual thing until you demonstrate, okay, this is how, AI helps you, right? You have an image, I can detect something in the image, send it to you, and then now you have information that you didn't have before.
Doing deep diving into the technology aspect of it, right? We have so many AI platforms today,
Yeah.
right? So how do you know which one to pick?
I just struggled with this question. It's true. One of my favorites so far is something called Boodlebox. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's actually like an educational type focus one. But what I think that they got right is they're agnostic to all of the different, generative AI models. They actually coalesce all of them into one place where you log in and you can like access all of the different ones. You can string them together in a bunch of different ways. You can do your prompting and just switch models like seamlessly in the chat window. So picking a one to use is, I think, very difficult. Like, because then you have to weigh different trade-offs. It's nothing. It's similar to the old school data science where you pick in SVMs versus linear regression versus deep learning, right? Like, what's your use case and how do you pick your model? I do think there's ones that are optimized for generating images, ones optimized for code development, but picking one Gen AI, I don't think is going to be possible. You kind of have to use them all to your advantage, but then you're stuck with this large AI bill from like all the different platforms, right? So that's difficult. It's a difficult question. Right now, AgTechLogic uses Gemini. We're also in the R&D side exploring using Gemma for deploying actually edge prompt engineering and using Gemma from Google on a embedded device and taking in an image and using a prompt to make a real-time recommendation at the edge. So still under development, but that's something we're exploring. And like I don't know that you can pick one, right? You can't. But you're gonna see a lot of cost for generative AI, I think, until you kind of find the right scenario, right? Maybe you have like a playground that's a sandbox, like uses Boodlebox that using Boodlebox to play with all of them first. You pick the right one that seems to work the right, and then you go and deploy it into your application.
And for a lot of the industries today, how do you when it comes to the spend? Because that's an important aspect of it. Mainly when it comes to, in the past, it was always the traditional approach, right? When you have the RDBMS and just having the data points, normal data points, at least you knew what you were doing. Because at least you had some clarity on what you were doing, and you were able to plan your budgets, and you wanted to know where you want to spend. It's easier to make decisions when it comes to budgeting and spending money on certain products.
Yeah.
But we are in this new space where, as you just mentioned, right, you're still finding it challenging to pick the right AI platform. I think that's just pretty much like the step one, right? Just making that decision in itself is, I think you still have to spend a lot of money, just to see what's right for your industry. And then on top of it, you'd have to plan things out, right? Like how do you take your product to the market. So what in general, right? I think for the companies and just let's say if someone's starting a product tomorrow, let's say somebody would like to have like a startup company, for future generation, right? How do they navigate these problems? How do they see what's how do they overcome some of these budget planning issues? So
Sure. No, budget is tough. So I just give you a tangible example that we've run into at AgTechLogic. We're capturing thousands of images per string of hundreds of acres, right? Maybe 200 acres. We capture 10,000 images or more because they run their sprayer for 3 to 4 hours in a good go, right? And so we have over probably 2 million images at this moment. And so right now our application is set up to make a prediction on every image in real time. We stream data through an IoT device to our cloud. We put it into a container and make a prediction on it in real time, right? And you can click on those images and see the recommendation in our application AgTelio, right? Well, there's still a cost associated with every API call, right? The real question is, does the user care if you are doing it in real time? For our particular demographic of agriculture guys, they don't have to probably have it in real time. We can do real time, but there's a cost savings there. If you did it in batch overnight, you actually we've done some work with Google through a few workshops where if we did batch predictions on all of our images, we'd actually save 50% overnight. So that's actually a project that we're working on. Is actually how do we save some of the money on doing all the batch predictions and still providing the value next day, let's say, instead of real time, because the likelihood that a manager needs to see it in real time probably not there. If they get an alert tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., hey, look, you have these issues, then that might be sufficient enough, right? And so you can save costs there. Other options too that we've explored is actually having to take the open source models and then, because there are open source transformers like through Hugging Face, where we're going to have to train our own models or bring it in and try to use the open source version and instead of going with the real-time API calls, because cost management becomes a thing, right? Like, very much so, especially if we put it into an application and we're highly dependent on the results for that. So that's a hard budget like question, right? Like, it's really becomes, does the consumer care about whatever feature you have, whether or not real time or overnight, and then are they willing to pay for that real time access, or is there other methods where you can kind of just like add a new feature that saves you money, if you will, that reducing overall API costs. One of the other options too that I've seen out there is there's been some optimization on prompt engineering that spends less tokens. You can run it through a screener where your ultimate request to the API is actually very concise and reduces the total number of tokens that you spend with the generative AI companies. So then you pay less in your expenditure. It's been an interesting thing, right? And I'll say that farmers and growers are very cost conscious. They're very cost conscious, right? Because they're we're not talking like massive margins in creating the food supply, and so being cost conscious is really what they focus on. What can I do to make it scale and go, how can I use this equipment to apply it to all of my operations? And a lot of times they're looking for an ROI of their investment within 18 months, and if they can get it less than 18 months, that's even better. But most growers in the industry and farming look about 18 months to 2 years for an ROI. And then after the 2-year mark, then they're making cost savings and money, and they're getting their payback into year 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
I just wanted to know, when we talk about farming, right? When you're applying all of these data and AI modules, are we just talking? Can it be applied to any farming, or is it applicable to only certain crop?
So these models, the generative AI models specifically, I've been impressed with their generalization to almost any crop. We've tested a lot on weed detection and classification of weed species, and coming from a guy that's not a farmer, and I didn't really know one thing about what kind of weed between purslane or nutsedge. I didn't know the difference between the two of them. So here, a data science guy trying to come in and label weed species and create my own model, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I have to go get an agronomist in here that's a specialist in weed species to label these things for me. But when you take an image and you throw it in there into generative AI and it says, this is nutsedge, or this is bluegrass, and correctly classifies it, like, it's pretty impressive. Then you take that image and take it to somebody, does this make sense to you? And they're like, oh yeah, I've seen that out on my farm. So the accuracy, to your point, has been pretty incredible with almost zero training, right? And then you can kind of fine tune from there with your own data sets, but if you have the data. But yeah, the accuracy out of the box is pretty impressive for agriculture. Like, let's say strawberry detection. I think some of those typical ones that you see in image detection and classification for, like, apples and grapes and strawberries, there's already models out there that are really good out of YOLO, but the Gen AI ones are just, incredible how accurate they can be.
Oh wow.
Yeah, with relatively quick work in some ways. You have to iterate a little bit, and they're going to be wrong. Like, there's many times where a farmer's like, well, this one particular image that I happened to click on was inaccurate, right? Again, you have to kind of like work through that management, but yeah, it's pretty accurate.
In your space, since you're training all of these modules right now for your machines and drones and all of the other stuff, right? What is the technology that you guys are? I mean, do you have to incorporate pretty much everything? Because you were talking about GPS and finding the exact location, right?
Yeah.
When you have to do things like that, are you incorporating the image recognition and also the NLPs, and how do you is that what you do right now, and how does that whole ecosystem work? So I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
curious.
So what AgTechLogic provides right now is a whole system for intelligent precision spraying, which helps you at the end of the day spray less herbicide and pesticides and chemical into the ground onto the vegetables. It sprays more accurately, right? Well, the data that we collect, though, the telemetry data is like flow rates and off of flow meters, GPS coordinates. We have cameras that take pictures every X number of seconds, and we send that information through the cloud and into our database. But then we visualize it in our AgTelio web interface, right? And so, as terms of variables, you can also calculate speed and how many acres have been covered. You can also calculate how much savings you have done or have helped them save by spraying more accurately. That's a lot of that is calculations that we've created, right? On instant information on how many, what percent of herbicide you've saved on this spray because you sprayed smarter, not harder. I mean, at the end of the day, using the AI side it's not, some of that's just statistics, right? Like, some of that's just formulas and calculations, which is still very innovative for an agriculture type market to see that displayed on your smartphone, when previous like thought process was, I'm going to open a nozzle, I'm going to spray these herbicides and pesticides on top of the vegetables that you eat, as well as the ground, because in a typical broadcast sense, you just open a nozzle and you just dump all the chemical as you're driving, and you don't worry about it. You just you dump the whole thing. You're like 100% of it, all of it. With intelligent precision spraying, you drive over the plants and you say, I'm only going to spray the things that are bad, and I'm not going to spray the things that are what I don't want to spray. I'm only going to kill the weeds. I'm not going to spray on top of everything else. And so there, by function, you have savings. But then the AI comes in on, well, what are the more complex and advanced things, like detection of plants wilting or dying their yellow leaves, or maybe maybe there's insects like just infesting the plant, and the farmer needs to know about that, because there's other things that they have to go and do to fix that, and they can mitigate it way earlier. and not actually lose their crop, right? So that's the danger. So AI is really good at the more advanced stuff, right? And so I think that's where we're getting into at AgTechLogic, is we've gotten to the basic stuff of identifying savings and calculations and formulas. Now we're getting into the more complex questions of like, well, where are the pests at? Can you detect this? Can you detect that? Can you count the number of grapes that we have and forecast for me what my crop yield is going to be? And yeah, you probably could do that. Like you can definitely do that with the images, right? We can definitely have models that count the blossoms on different plants, right? Like there's so much opportunity in the agricultural market to deploy AI and help be more efficient. Because right now, how they calculate crop yield, they send out 20, 30 people, and they just have them go walk the acreage or drive the acreage, and they have one of those clickers, and they just click the buds. They just click on it, and they just count by sight, right? They're just looking at it, and they tick mark it. So there's so much opportunity in the AI side for that.
One of your driving force, as part of the AgTech, right, is building farming sustainability, right? So I think how do you measure that?
Yeah, we have a mission at AgTechLogic to reduce 1 billion pounds of chemical use by 2028, and that's 1 billion pounds. Like 1 billion pounds could be sprayed in a year, but the sustainability aspect of it is if you spray less herbicide, there's a direct trajectory between chemicals sprayed and some things that cause cancer. It's out there on the internet. You can look it up. So spraying less herbicide, the things that control weed population to effectively grow food, with spraying less, you'll have better soil health. You'll have better plant health. Because the plants are more healthy, they resist pest infection better. And then so the sustainable aspect is actually more higher quality food, right, for the food supply. So it's quite it's a massive undertaking to say, 1 billion pounds by 2028. That's what AgTechLogic is here to do. But that's really what we believe in and what we're trying to march towards. So putting intelligent spraying equipment onto sprayers, helping a solution with aerial drones, and there's actually drones out there that you can fly over farmland that have special cameras that scan the ground and can detect early problems. And if you can analyze the image and get it to the farmer and say, hey, start here first, you save a lot of time, because the grower has to drive all of those acres every year, every season to manage their crop. And so like prioritizing how they go about their business and making action out of it is really, I think, how we're going to make an impact.
I'm going to switch topic here, right? Even in the data space, two most important things that all the companies are looking at right now is, one is the data and AI, which we just touched, and the other important aspect is the risk side of it, right? When you start, since you being the CTO of the company, when you start relying, correct me if I'm wrong, based on what you share, you're heavily relying on data and AI right now, for all of your generative modules, right? Detections and all of the good stuff that you just mentioned. So when you have more dependency on AI, how are because you come with a very interesting background, Justin. You've spent a good amount of time in risk and compliance on the data side of it, right? So how are you applying the risk and compliance while you are also driving these AI initiatives?
Yeah, that's actually something I thought about. One of those data compliance things that for me for risk is privacy, data privacy. When you get something for free, you're essentially giving away your data, and so I've been very selective on what generative AI models we use. And there's some that are more data privacy focused than others. But at the end of the day, when you give up that information to go get a prompt answer, you're also likely giving away your data for them to train their model, and of course make it better for you to use later. But also, one thing that has been a thing in my previous life as an AI guy in cybersecurity for the defense industry was protecting data, protecting your information, and making sure that that information only goes to where you want it to go, right? Because how that translates to an ag economy, where whenever you collect images off of a farm, you know GPS information, you know what it looks like on the ground, you know what the surroundings look like. And now you've given away that imagery to certain groups, right? And so there are some interesting ethics that get into like data privacy and data policy when you start using generative AI and sending data to these models that need to be retrained, right, on your data that you give away. So I don't know the right answer yet on some of those things, but what we like to view is that I believe that data should be owned by the person that generated the data. And now there's also some unique things in the NFT market where maybe we could use the blockchain to encrypt some of the information and show chain of custody for the images. And so then you have some sort of map to, hey, I created this data, it belongs to me, it becomes a digital asset, rather than just freely giving your data away, which you can tell that I'm going to try to avoid so much of the soapbox here, but it's quite a passion, right? Because I spent a lot of time in the cybersecurity area, training AI models for detection of hackers in a network. Seen a lot of like cybersecurity has such big data to use, and there's also like a lot of challenges in cybersecurity where generative AI is actually writing malicious software. I know some friends of mine that are ethical hackers that they're licensed ethical hackers, but they use generative AI to write malicious code to pen test a network. And so in the wrong hands, in an unethical way, you could use generative AI to write malicious code, and you could take down networks. So there's definitely some ethics there, data ethics that a whole can of worms just can open out of that.
Because I'm fascinated with your. I think, like I said previously, I'm glad that you are part of my podcast because you come with a very interesting background. Justin. Like I said, three hot topics today, right? One is data and AI. I think being the CTO, you're always innovating things and are looking at different aspects of it. And secondly, I think farming is something that's very critical, just not for US market, but farming has so much of I think global market presence, right? Even if I take India, I think most of the revenue generator for India is still farming. Okay, so I mean, if you look at other countries too, I think farming has a very critical piece. Okay, and you come with risk backgrounds. I think you've pretty much covered all of the important pieces which are very important for the industry today.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much so. One of the things that I would say across industry is that data. You heard the old adage, data is the new oil, right? But I kind of add on that data is sometimes power if used correctly, and you can't necessarily just give up data for free, even though we do that all the time when we Google search, we use Perplexity and we ask a bunch of questions. They're getting insight into your brain and what you're thinking about, right? And so on the privacy side of things, it's very critical to like think about how to ethically use generative AI, right? And then on the farming side, there's so much opportunity and innovation. And farming is ancient, right? Like we've been doing farming since we were, very, very young as a civilization, and we're still doing farming because we all have to eat, right? But it hasn't really changed in like 100 years or so. One thing that I was the most shocked about coming into the farming industry, coming out of I was in consulting in cybersecurity, defense contracting for a long time, and then coming into the farming side, it's just like wow, like they farmers by themselves are innovators. They try things out. They test things. They try, use one season as a test and did that work? Did that not? But the technology side is like, some of these tractors are just, from the 20s, 30s. It can be in some cases. So it hasn't really changed a whole lot. They're still facing a lot of the same problems. They're changing different things, but still, it's a very open market for autonomy, robotic solutions using object detection. Believe it or not, there's a massive labor shortage in agriculture. Where, my mom grew up one of seven of a cotton farm in Texas, and you need those seven kids because you need the labor, right? They got to get out there. They got to get that out there and pick some cotton, right? And so going in fast forwarding now, and I'm kind of seeing like, well, there's actually a really large labor shortage. Whenever you talk to a grower, there's really three things that they worry about. There's like weeds that are growing on that are invasive species of weeds that can overtake their crop and destroy their crop. They worry about pests, and they worry about labor. Like those three things, and water as well, making sure they have enough water to make everything grow. But those three things are the challenges. And so the labor thing we can talk about with robotics and aerial drones, and we actually at AgTechLogic have a robot that has an articulating arm that can pick strawberries and pick things off of a vine. It can drive autonomously and pick, and then so there's so many companies out there, but the technology isn't large scale yet. It's not. They're not farming on a large autonomous solution. Maybe these growers, even at the enterprise, may have two. They may have two or three of these autonomous things that they're testing, and they've been testing it for like 2 years, right? Because it has to work. It has to provide ROI. If it doesn't provide ROI, they won't buy it. They're not going to do it because they're going to go back to their traditional methods. And so the robotics and AI stuff has to kind of, they call it pencil out. It has to work right on paper. It has to show ROI, and once it shows ROI, then they can make the investment. So anyway, I don't know. We kind of went around.
Yeah, no, I think that's
cross industry there, but and data privacy is still an issue between cybersecurity and agriculture, because if in cybersecurity, they attack some sort of infrastructure, and some of the food supply gets cut, then that's tough too. So, yeah, it's wild.
I'm going to switch topic here because one is the I think since you're spearheading the innovation of it, right? Technology. One of the challenges that I see in the industry today is do we have the right talent available to make things happen, right? Because that's been a bigger challenge that I've seen. Almost with every CXO that I met recently, right? The biggest challenge is one is being in the CIO or CTO space. You know, you are you are more of a visionary, right? You want things to happen, okay? And but are you also able to get the right talent from the industry today? Who can support your vision?
Yeah. In talent's tough, right? Being when I was in the data space for so long, you kind of have to grow your own, if you will. You have to grow and train some of your own data talent. And I don't focus so much on the knowledge and the degree, because from my background, colleges of data science didn't exist whenever I was a data scientist. The only way that I became a data scientist is because I just started doing the data science work, right? Like I looked and smelled like a data scientist, right? There was no college degree that said you are now a data scientist by degree, and now you can go off and do things. So sourcing talent is really tough, because then how do you find a good data scientist? When I first started hiring data scientists, like I was like, well, there's no college degree that says this person is a data scientist. The people that come together in the college to make the data science degree are cross departments between software guys, engineer guys, and all these ones, and they kind of cobble together to make a data science department. So finding talent, I had to like sidestep that a little bit and said, okay, what am I looking for in a person, right? Like grit. Grit is like definitely number one, right? Find somebody that has grit. Find somebody that thinks innovatively, that loves a challenge, isn't afraid of a challenge, because then those two paired together are going to say, well, I'm resilient enough to take something new, and I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to apply myself. This new technology doesn't scare me. It's just a new technology that I have to spend some time with, and then ultimately I become an expert on it, and then now I can use it in a corporate environment or for whatever my company is. So in some cases you kind of have to like go by feel in like their character, but then also they do have to know something. They have to know, fundamentally a programming language, right? Like they have to have the capacity to program something. You don't have to know the exact language, but you have to be able to teach yourself and learn the new language. So finding data scientists and the talent is kind of tough, because it's, in my opinion, it's gotten better now that we have like college of data science, and people know what a data engineer is. They know what a data scientist is. What do they do? What do they not do? It's more defined now. But in the early days, it was just like, whew, I hope you're great. I hope you're great. If not, we have to train you, right? Because truthfully, like a job posting, we were talking about this earlier. When you see a job posting for 10 years of generative AI experience, like that's not even been around for like 10 years. What are you talking about? In the early days of job postings, it was funny because you would look at them and they'd be like 10 years of programming and this and that, and knowing these models and applying it, and like that model hasn't even been out but like for a year, 2 years. I think Gemma's been out for maybe 2 months, for the most part, right? So just the expectation level of an employer to say, I'm going to hire good people that I trust and I like, and they can do a good job, and they have the open-mindedness to learn new things, and they're going to try really hard to actually get it done. And having reasonable expectations, I think, is how you hire the talent. But then also making partners with different boot camps, that are training up different data scientists, making partners with college, different universities that have those programs. I think you have to kind of find them in different pockets. I actually ran in San Antonio a meetup group for a number of years that went from it was 10, 15 people, and then now on Meetup it's like 700 members of data scientists. And every month we would have a meetup. And there for a time, few years, it was very active. More and more people were coming, up to 80 people a month. And every time they came into a meetup group, it was, hey, probably about three things. Hey, my boss wants me to be a data scientist. I have no idea how to be a data scientist. I'm an engineer and I'm a software guy. I don't know what to do. Tell me what a data scientist is. What am I supposed to learn, right? That was probably category number one. Number two is, hey, I'm thinking about pivoting into data science. I used to do this and that, and I want to do data science because it pays well, right? And at the time, and how do I break into data science? That was probably bullet number two. And then number three was should I go to a boot camp or should I go to university? At the time when I was running the meetup group, there wasn't a whole lot of universities that really knew how to do data science. And so, there was just opportunity in both of those. You can't go wrong in either one, probably. But yeah, those were the three categories of people that showed up to these meetup groups. And I'm maybe oversimplifying, but it was hard. It was hard to find talent. I think it's still hard to find talent, but at least it's more defined now.
I'm glad you brought it up because one of I think recently when I speak to the younger generation, right? Fresh college graduates, they just finish their school, and they want to get into the market, right? Find something. A lot of the times, I think they are being sucked into this data science world, right? Because that's the buzzword right now. Everybody would like to have a piece of data science, in their I think in their career, especially when they're into the IT space, right? And one of the areas where they were still not sure is I think they start learning things. They want to be market ready. Start learning things. Trying to find a job. In this process, I think where I see a lot of the younger generation, were trying to pivot, right? When there's a job posting for a data engineer and a job posting for data science, they're like, what, I kind of learned, I know how to build, I know Python, I know PySpark, right? I pretty much know everything what the data science job posting is saying. But I'm more towards building data lakes and pipeline data pipes and all of that. So how do I know if I'm a data engineer or data science, right? I think they just so I'm like, yeah, that's great because end of the day, I think you're still using the same similar technology stack, right? But how do they differentiate and how do they? I think based on your experience, have in my view to right, having a data engineering background and pivoting towards data science and learning the NLPs and image recognition. I think it's more of an advanced, right? And it helps to see things in a bigger picture. But based on your if you have to give an advice to the younger generation, right? If they come back and ask you, hey, do I need to be a data engineer or data science, right? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, that's funny. You asked that question. I gave a talk once on that was AI as a team sport, and that was kind of like the title of the talk, right? But throughout the talk was a concept of you have different buckets: data scientist, data engineer, business intelligence, right? And whenever you find yourself as a data scientist spending 90% of your time cleaning data and having to go and clean it, if you're the only one or two data scientists on the team, you're either both the data engineer and the data scientist, or you're both going to split the work and one's going to focus on the model, one's going to focus on the data engineering, right? And then that way you come back together and you have a product. But when you get into enterprise, right, you have teams of people that focus on cleaning and teams of people in making great data, metadata management, cleaning and labeling data. So when you get down to it and say, what's the guidance, right? How do I know I'm a data engineer? I think you start the models that this is Justin's opinion, don't hold me to it, but sometimes universities focus on the model itself. There was an interesting conference that I went to. I think it was Andre Karpathy, I think, it was Tesla's director of AI at the time, and I went to a Spark AI summit at one point, and I really made an impact because he showed this pie chart on a slide, and the model was like this tiny little sliver of the overall data pipeline, and data engineering was like this massive part of the pie chart, right? And so I think that there's going to be more data engineers than there are going to be of data scientists, because the model, you can only tune a model and its parameters so much without actually having to go back and clean the data and fix the data and relabel the data and like that whole process to do it. And so I think if you like working in massive data movement of things like cleaning data on petabyte scales on cluster computers, that some of that stuff like operating at a really big scale of work, I think you're a data engineer. if you like, your passion is just like only the model, selecting the model, getting a prediction, tuning the models, coming up with different tests and blind tests to make sure that the model is generalizing correct, I think you're a data scientist, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably asking yourself, where is my passion, right? When I helped the Code Up, there was a boot camp called Code Up that I helped kind of early days create data scientists. They were creating data generalists, a little bit of data engineering, a little bit of data science. Whenever you get into data profession, there's different verticals, right? And you're probably gonna do a little bit of it throughout your career. But if you choose a specialty, try to choose the one that like you most enjoy, right? And so that, I don't know, that would be my recommendation. Try to find the one you enjoy the most, right? And then that way you're going to work harder, you're going to enjoy life better, yeah, I think you'll probably be proud to be a data engineer rather than like, oh man, I'm a data engineer. You don't want to be in that spot.
One thing I would like to ask about farming is about our organic farming. Okay, industry is driving towards organic farming. And in my view, when we talk about organic farming, and it's pretty much like no pesticides at all, right? What based on what AgTech is building today, is it applicable to organic farming as well, or is it just for non-organic?
Yeah, great questions. Usually when we talk about organic farming, a little bit kind of base knowledge that you have to do. Usually in organic farming, you don't use any kind of chemicals. It's just really, you grow it and you can do tilling, you can use mechanical means to like clear out weeds and different things like that. But it doesn't mean that it's not, AI is not useful in those situations, right? You can still, if growers still scout, they have this idea of scouting where they take, they'll drive by their plots or they'll drive up and down the rows where they're checking on things, right? They're still looking for, pests that have taken over the plant. Pests don't care if whether or not you're spraying herbicide or not, and they still try to get after the plants, right? And so there's still opportunity for AI detection. There's still opportunity to reduce labor. So I'll give you a tangible example of organic versus, using spray for not only fertilization and pesticides, but also weed management and herbicides. I was on a farm in Oregon. It was a rhubarb farmer, and he had an organic plot. It was literally right next to the plot that he also sprayed chemicals into. And so you had this sign up that said organic area, and then the rest of his plots there that were I guess I don't know the right word, inorganic, not nor conventional, I think is the right term, conventional. So his request was actually, I want robots to come out here and pick rhubarb for me because I'm having labor challenges. And different states are also increasing the minimum wage for the labor force on some of these smaller farms. And so I want you to kind of give me an estimate on like how is it possible for robots to come out here, pick rhubarb in an efficient way. And it was all organic, right? Like he still had weed problems, right? But they didn't spray in that area. And so even though like even though you may not be spraying, you still have the challenges to solve. You're either doing it mechanically or that's an opportunity for robotics. And for it to come in and either manually pick either weeds or plants or manually till, because you still have to have an operator, a driver, to drive the mechanical system. So if you have an autonomous, let's say tiller or autonomous disking of things, like there's still lots of opportunity for AI in that area, even in organic plants. But the thing that makes organic unique is that they don't spray anything, right? And so there's not really flow information. There's not really any there's GPS there, but there's not really flow data. So you're not saving on flow, but you're saving in labor. And so if you can figure out a system that scales well in an autonomous way, then I think that's an application for organic farms.
What is your personal experience on organic farming?
Actually, I'm glad you asked. I'm a gardener. I garden. I started it in COVID when I thought it's funny enough, I came to this realization. I was like, you know what? I better know how to grow food. If this stuff goes south, I better know how to grow food myself. So I started an apocalypse garden in COVID. I had plenty of time because I wasn't going anywhere. And so I actually love organic gardening. I've grown tomatoes. I have a massive harvest of squash this year. I can show you pictures later of me and my sons. We're picking squash that we grew, and it's still the same challenges even without any kind of spray. Like you have weeds everywhere. You have to hand pick the weeds, and otherwise they'll get into everything. So I love organic growing. Like we actually eat the squash. My sons pick the cucumbers. We eat the cucumbers, and I've grown watermelon, and I have some sunflowers and corn and just a whole smattering of stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning, right? I'm learning in some of this way, but I have a newfound respect for the enterprise scale of the food supply. Because if you think about just, my little small plot of, let's call it a small plot of food, it takes me lots of time just to even get the harvest. And even that harvest doesn't even feed like my whole family in vegetables, right? Like, so just to supply and have the scale to feed the U.S. at the level that these growers do, it's a massive challenge, and it's a huge operation. So I have a newfound respect for what they do and just the scale at which they do it. But love organic stuff. It's really great to get your hands in the dirt and see it grow. My wife makes fun of me sometimes, like it's my other children, like these little plants. You're putting them the seed, you're growing the little things, you're like staring at them, hoping, playing them some music, and you're like, oh yeah, you grow beautifully, and then you're real sad whenever the squash borer comes in. Literally, just 2 days ago, I went out to my garden and I had lost a squash because the squash borer is a insect that took out one of my squash plants and it was dead. And it's like, well, there went that one. So,
Just want to make sure, right? You did mention that you'll be, sharing the pictures,
Yeah.
but I actually need the actual food and not the pictures.
I have some in my freezer. No problem. No problem. You come to San Antonio next, we'll eat some organic squash. Absolutely. More than enough.
Got it. I think now I have a good reason to come to San right? One last thing, right? Now that with you being with AgTech, you've grown this interest into farming, and you've learned a lot about farming, which you haven't known in the past, right?
Right.
So for your retirement, do you want to be a farmer or a technology officer?
Oh my goodness, I would. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great question. My quickest answer as of right now is I have already looked into owning different acreage of having a small farmland. I do want to live on some land at some point. But as a kid that grew up going to a farm and spending time with my grandpa that had 70 acres out in El Campo, Texas, it's a different style of living, right? And there's a certain element of I don't know, clean air, if you will. My grandfather would have said country water is cleaner than city water in some ways, and so I think there's a truth to that in some ways, because there's a lot less I don't know density, I suppose, when you're out and kind of like in the open spaces. And me as a person, I actually really enjoy the outdoors, so I don't think that that would be a bad retirement at all. Just spending time, maybe not an operating farm, maybe more like a vineyard. Like that's something people do, right? When they retire, they buy a vineyard, make wine. I would totally do that for sure. Texas has a really good wine country out in Fredericksburg, so really great. No, I think maybe that might be my grand retirement is having a small little winery or something.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that once you have everything ready, just make sure that I have my invite. So
I'm in full disclosure. I tried growing grapes in my garden, and the grape plant did not survive. Did not survive. So I think I'm going to have a lot more practice before then. So yeah.
Justin, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you've been part of my podcast today. Appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure. Love talking with you, and anytime.
yeah, and I'll see you soon in San Antonio for the plantation.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.